Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Pause the video right now to check out my social media, my radio show, and thatdrummerguy.com. And most of all, enjoy the following presentation.
Yes, hello?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for taking the time to do this interview.
No worries, thank you.
Oh, awesome. Well, it's been a few years since we've been able to talk. The last time that we did an interview was in Minnesota when you guys were a part of Summer Slaughter, so it's great to be able to catch up after all this time.
Oh yeah, that tour, I remember. Right on.
Oh, awesome. Well, of course, there's a lot of great stuff that you're being a part of right now, and one of the things that we're going to be able to talk about here is some brand new music from the ocean off your brand new compilation from Pelagic Records.
That's right. Some new tunes.
First off, going with that, of course, Pelagic Records is you are the founder of. So how did this compilation come to be?
We basically wanted to offer a good cut through our entire roster to people who were aware of parts of it, but not all of it. So the idea was that we really wanted to, shed some light on the bands that not everyone would be familiar with. And we've, at the moment, released close to 100 records, so there's a lot out there to discover. But a lot of people are, familiar with or bigger acts like Mono or Cult of Luna or The Ocean, but may not know some of the other bands. So that was the main idea behind it. Then, at the same time, we wanted to make this a very audible, listenable playlist, like a record by itself, if you want. So, like a record that you really want to listen to from the beginning of it until the end, basically. And so we spent a lot of time, juggling tracks around and trying to really make it a track list that is where every track is ideally representative of the respective artist. That's important, of course, but at the same time where the playlist itself, becomes a new album of sorts, and that's something we've tried to do. I'm not sure how close we got to that, actually, but that was the idea.
Well, I can definitely say from the fan aspect, I mean, I really appreciate the fact that you guys went through this much effort to be able to show off the entire roster, and I think it's an amazing collection of over 2.5 hours of music. I mean, there's such a wide variety that you guys covered that even I didn't realize that you covered as much ground as you did.
Yeah, it's been a lot of releases since 2009. I was surprised myself to find out that we were going to hit the 100 soon, and I guess time flies. But I mean, you're based in the U.S., and we haven't really been active in the U.S. since until last year. Basically, we started working with Red Distribution like summer of last year. So a lot of our releases have not really been available in the U.S. So I understand how a lot of American listeners are only familiar with a very small fraction of our roster. In Europe, I think we have a much better standing just because we've been operating here and having physical distribution in all territories pretty much since 2009. And in the US, that's still something that's completely new to us, which is great, and it's working out great. I'm very happy that we've managed to expand to that side of the Atlantic.
And with that said, I mean, hitting almost triple digits when it comes to albums that have been coming out through Pelagic Records. What is it you're looking for when you want to sign a band to your label?
I basically just sign bands that I really like, and that's very difficult and very hard to find sometimes. I guess that depends on me more than on the bands out there, actually. I don't know, for a long time, I haven't really discovered much music that I was so interested in, and that was the phases when we didn't really do so much with Pelagic. The label has been very, let's say, not very consistently active since its beginning. There have been periods when we've released a lot, but there have also been longer extended periods of time when we've only released very few records or no records at all. And this was on one hand related to how much I was doing with the ocean, because of course my time is limited, physically limited somehow. And when I'm on tour with the ocean, I can't put as much time and effort into Pelagic Records. So that's one thing that has influenced that. The other thing is that for quite a long time, I haven't really found as much exciting music that I really wanted to release. as lately, and since about a year or so now, I've really started listening to music again and really been discovering bands, and that's why we're releasing so much right now, because I've kind of like rediscovered my passion for music in a way. I guess at one point I was just doing so much music myself that I wasn't really so keen on like actively looking for bands and digging through the submissions or whatever, or just the recommendations of friends and other people in bands as lately. So yeah, that's the two main influencing factors, like how much time do I really have to commit to the label, and then how much exciting stuff is out there that I'm aware of that is not released that I want to release. So that's the two main things.
And speaking of that, I'm very intrigued about that. Was there like a particular song or a particular band where it really started to get your interest into checking out new music again?
I don't think so. I think it was more like a more gradual evolution or development, and it also had a lot to do with the fact that I wasn't really on tour with the Ocean all the time, playing music, every day. So I think that's why I really started listening to music again. And then also, I mean, a lot of the bands we work with are bands that we have already been aware of for a long time, bands that we have played with or that have been recommended to us by friends, or bands that we discovered somewhere along the way. It's quite rarely the case that we really dig through demo submissions and then find that magical gem, hidden among all the not so great stuff. It's usually bands that we already have had on our radar for a while. And I guess this year we've just there have been a lot of structural changes for the label. We've moved into a bigger warehouse. We started the US and Australian distribution. We now have full-time employees working for the label and all of this kind of stuff. So we spent a lot of time in our warehouse and in our office and listening to music. And at the same time, there was like this pile of stuff that I was interested in, but I hadn't really had the time to properly look into. And this year I started working my way into that. And then I discovered that there's a lot of cool shit out there, and that got me very excited. And then here we are now with a whole bunch of releases still to be done in the second half of the year.
And that's what I appreciate so much about this compilation. I mean, it really shows off the diversity of the label. I mean, like, Abraham doesn't sound like Clone, which doesn't sound like Mono, which doesn't sound like The Ocean. It's just like it covers such a great scale of what the label is capable of showing off.
Right. I guess it's quite diverse, right? I mean, we've always had these kind of two directions in the label, one focusing more on the post-rock or instrumental rock side, and then one more on the really heavy stuff. But limiting it to these two sides, which is kind of what we're doing with the division of these two CDs, is not really doing all these bands justice, because there are definitely a lot of bands that would have fit onto both sides of the compilation. And we noticed that when we compiled the playlist, that we actually even allowed it in a few cases, but actually a lot of bands would have had a fitting track for CD1 as well as a fitting track for disc 2. So that division is only partially accurate, let's say, and that just shows that a lot of the bands we work with are not so easy to categorize, and that they come from that they merge within themselves a whole range of musical influences that you can't always pin down to like one exact origin or one exact type of scene. And I think that's great, and that's what really makes them unique as artists.
And that's what always drew me to The Ocean, because it's really hard to pinpoint what you guys sound like, because there is so much diversity that's going on. And the last LP is a great example of that. I mean, being able to show off everything that's going on there through the concepts of like how it's getting progressively heavier throughout the album. So with that being the case, how did it go about writing new music for this compilation? How did you guys decide which direction you wanted to go in?
You mean with The Ocean?
With the new song that was released for the project, for the compilation.
That wasn't really a new song, as you would imagine it. That was basically a leftover from the Pelagic session. That was a track that was already written in 2012 and was recorded in the same recording session as all the Pelagic material, but it didn't really fit on the record, and so it was kind of leftover. That was just laying around my hard drive for the last 3 or 4 years, and I knew it was there. And now for this compilation, I kind of dug it back up again. But yeah, so it's not really consciously like a new song. It's not necessarily representative of the direction of the new record, which we are currently actually working on. It has that Pelagic vibe. I think it actually could have been on that record very well. It just didn't. It wasn't conceptualized at the same time as the rest of the music on that record, which was really written from the beginning to the end as one long song, you know. And that track was kind of like not part of that process, and that's why it didn't end up on the record. But now that it's finished and that I was listening to it, I was thinking, it could have actually worked, you know, somewhere in the second half of the record. Could have actually worked out pretty well.
Well, I'm glad to see, even though it didn't end up on the record, that it did get to see the light of day, because it does fit so well with the compilation.
Right, yeah, I think in the context of the compilation works really great, and yeah, I'm happy with it from the perspective of the ocean as well. It is a representative song in a way, although there is no vocals on it, of course. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have released it as a new ocean track if I wasn't happy with it, you know. But at the same time, it must be said that it's already 5 years old, this track.
Oh, sure. But just a couple seconds ago, you did mention something that really made me happy, the fact that you guys are working on a brand new album from the ocean. Is there anything you can talk about yet as far as when it comes to the new album?
Yes, I can tell you a few things. It's in the making. It's about 80% written, I would say, at this point. And we're aiming to record over the winter months and release it sometime next year. That's about as much as I can go into details with regards to timing. It's a lot of material, enough to fill at least 2 records or 4 EPs or 8 7-inch records, whatever format you wanted to choose. It's a lot of material, and we haven't really decided yet in which shape or form we're eventually going to release it, but it's definitely going to be more than just one record. And well, the material has been shaping up very nicely this summer. Some of it was already written about a year ago, but because we were touring so much and still last year, you know, we had to kind of like always work on it for a little bit, then put it to rest, and then get back to it. And now this summer I was putting some finishing touches on a lot of the tracks, and also involved our former or still current lighting guy, Peter, and worked on some electronic parts with him that are shaping up to be really, really cool. He's going to be a main new contributor on this record. And I'm very excited to get into the studio and record it now and see where it takes us. We haven't been in the studio for a long time. We've been touring a lot, and at the end of the Pelagic touring cycle last year, we were all of us getting to the point where we were like, it's really time for something new now. You know, we've played these songs in the same order so many times, and as much as it always works, and it's great to play them, we're all very keen to start working on something new. And that's the vibe right now. We're all super stoked to make a new record and to be in the studio and then, you know, see where it takes us. So I think there's something good coming very soon.
Yeah, and that makes me very stoked as a fan. I mean, the fact the album is so far along already, there's going to be some new elements that's going to be added in there, especially with the electronic elements. I mean, I'm very intrigued to see what direction that's going to be going in, because I love the idea of that.
Yeah, same here. I mean, it's always like, you know, when you have pre-productions, you can kind of anticipate and get the idea and the intention of where it's going to go in the end. But obviously, it isn't until you properly record everything until you really know what the deal is. And right now, all we have is those pre-productions and the way these songs exist in my mind. And I'm super excited to see how that is all going to sound and pan out when they're properly recorded, you know, and when Paul plays drums and not the drums that I program and all this kind of stuff. So yes, it's exciting, and I think it's been coming together very nicely, and we've spent a lot of time over the summer really like reducing things, you know, like boiling it down to its essence, getting rid of a bunch of stuff as well that I had written and wasn't really sure if it was good enough or it was fitting, and really focusing on the stuff where I'm 100% sure that it's going to be awesome in the end. And this is also part of the process of making a good record, I think, is like taking some distance to it and waiting and seeing how you feel about something that you wrote a couple months later down the line. You know, if you still feel as excited about it, or if you maybe think that something could be still made better, or some transitions are not ideal or whatever. And this is something I've really wanted to do with this new material, to give myself time with it, and to not make any compromises, to not accept any situation where I'm like, this is a cool riff, but somehow this transition isn't really, you know, like this. I don't want this. I want tracks that are from the beginning to the end 100% convincing. And I think this is something that you can already obtain in the pre-production phase. You know, this is not something you have to, it's not about tweaking details or, you know, like tweaking the reverb on the snare drum, you know, like in order to make that work. It's in the songwriting, and this is something that you can already figure out very early in the process of writing. And this is something I've wanted to do here, to really get everything as good as I can possibly do it, and as I want it, and to satisfy myself in the pre-production phase already before going into the studio. That's been kind of the aim with this.
Yeah,
and I think we're getting close now.
Yeah, and I was going to say, that makes me so happy that you guys have taken this amount of time to be able to make sure that you are putting out the best material possible, rather than feeling like you're rushed. You know, it's like, oh, it's been a couple years since the last album, we better just throw some songs together and hope for the best. I mean, the fact that you guys are taking this much time and effort, making sure everything's the way that you want it to go, and, you know, just like getting everything down that you possibly can before pre-production. And a lot of people forget how much songs can change from pre-production until its final recorded form. So, I mean, the fact that you guys are going about it this way, I mean, it makes me very happy and excited for the next release that comes out, because I can tell that it's in the right hands.
I guess it will be, yeah. We're excited too. We're super stoked to finally do this, and good things take time. That's how it is, and we've had a lot of output in the last, or, you know, like, let's say ever since the beginning of this band. This is the first time that we have not released a record in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years, and it's going to be in 5 years next year, but that's when the record will strike. And so this is, for us, this is a very long time without releasing music, and this is not because, you know, we've become bored of music. We've toured as much as physically possible on Pelagic, and really, you know, try to squeeze the most out of this record for ourselves and also for our fans as possible. And this mission is now accomplished. Now it's time for something new, and it's taken 5 years. That's what it is. People are hopefully hungry to hear something new, so that's good.
Oh, I definitely am. And, you know, there's been little teases of that, too. I mean, when you guys did the split with Mono, I mean, hearing a new B-side off this new compilation. So there's a little bit there to make sure that the fans of the Ocean know that you guys are still kicking around and coming up with ideas, whether they're old material, new material, whatever the case is. And, you know, just like with hearing this, being a fan and knowing everything that's going into the songwriting, and, of course, the amazing amount of upcoming touring I'm sure you guys are going to be doing. I mean, it just makes me very excited as a fan of the Ocean.
Cool, man. Same here.
So, for anyone that's checking this out, who is just familiar with the Ocean and not as familiar with your label, how would you describe it for people who may not be familiar with the fact that you own a label? Like, how would you describe it to people?
The record label, you mean?
Yes.
Well, the label was initially started because of the band. Maybe I should say that first. I started Pelagic Records because I wanted to re-release the Ocean's Fluxion record on CD, and that was back in 2009. Metal Blade didn't want to do it at that time, And Andreas from the European office, he was like, why don't you do it yourself? And I was thinking about it for a moment, and then I was like, yeah, sure, I can do it myself. And he actually helped me out with some distributors' contacts, and that's how the whole label was started, long story short. So, of course, it's very much related to the ocean. There's a lot of bands on it that people who are into the ocean will like. There's also some maybe more unexpected stuff on it. The stylistic range is quite diverse. I mean, we have those two main channels, let's say. There's like the post-rock channel that is represented by bands like Mono or PG Lost or EF or Sleep Makes Waves or this amazing Chinese post-rock band called Wang Wen. And on the other hand, there's the, let's call it the heavy channel, represented by bands like Abraham or LLNN. There's Bison from Vancouver, Canada, that we recently signed, released a great new record this year. And a lot of other bands, KROKKS from Switzerland. So that's the two main channels. And then, of course, there's a lot of bands that don't really fit into any of these channels. Bands like Clone from France, for example, that started off as a more or less a metal band, but have now entirely switched towards clean vocals and have just become this epic rock band that is writing really, really good songs. They've just released an acoustic record this year, which is another dimension to a band that you already knew. And that's just one example. There's a lot of bands that don't really fit so easily into these categories, and I think that's also what kind of defines the label somehow. But yeah, if you only know the ocean, I think there's a lot to discover that you might like as well. In terms of other bands on the label.
Oh, sure. And you did mention this earlier in the interview that you do go through a lot of demos and band submissions when they're coming to looking through the label. If there's anyone in a band right now that got their interest in possibly trying to send something your way to go in the label, what would you recommend for those bands?
Basically, don't put your hopes on this kind of method of like scoring a record deal, because it almost never works that way. We've signed very few bands because of demo submissions, I have to say. Most of the bands we work with are bands that we have known for a while already because they have toured, because we became aware of them by seeing them live supporting another band or by recommendations of other friends in bands and stuff like that. And it has very rarely happened that, like a band sent us a demo and we dug it out of the mailbox and then listened to a CD and we're like, oh fuck, this is awesome, let's sign this band. There is one case, that's this Australian band Low that we've just released a new record of. Amazing band. They sent me a demo, and that caught my attention because it was very neatly packaged. It was like a mini CD in a silkscreen printed cover, and I was like, oh, that kind of looks cool. So I decided to check it out, and it was really good music on it, and that's how I actually got in touch with that band. But that's an exceptional case. We've released 99 records as of now, and maybe 2 or 3 of them were because of demos that we got sent in. So my advice, since you were asking for that, is go out and put your music in front of people. You don't need a record label to do that. Everyone can book their own tours these days, and use the internet to promote their records. And this is a lot more efficient way to get closer to labels or to get labels' attention than to send them demos and hope that someone will get back to you. That can become very frustrating. I know this from my own experience, but I understand also now that this is just not the right way. So go out there and put your music in front of people would be my advice.
Yeah, that's such a smart way to go about it. I mean, especially in 2017. I mean, there are so many ways to be able to accomplish getting your voice out there when it comes to being in a band. I mean, having a label backing you is always going to be a bonus as far as when it comes to reach and being able to get your name out there further. But, it's just like when you really have that established name behind you before you start looking for a label, I mean, it can have a lot more positive influence as far as when it comes to reaching out for a label.
Totally.
Well, awesome. Well, again, Robin, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about everything that's going on with your label, everything that's going on with the ocean. Being a fan of both, I mean, it was very awesome to be able to talk about both and cover everything that's going on. I'm very excited to see all the positive reception I've seen for the new compilation, being able to show off so many of the great bands that you have at your label, and of course getting excited for the brand new release from the Ocean. I can already tell that's going to be one of my favorite albums of the year when that comes out. I mean, just with the way that you're describing it, and it's just awesome to see that you are keeping so busy with everything and just staying so positive and motivated when it comes to all this, because the music industry can take a toll on people, but the fact that you are able to keep up with all of this and, you know, just being able to promote everything, I mean, it's so awesome to see.
Great, man. Thanks for the kind words. Happy to hear that.
Oh, not a problem. But before we wrap things up, is there anything else you'd like to mention that I hadn't brought up yet?
I think you've pretty much covered it all. Thanks for the exposure and taking the time to talk to me. Very cool.